The special operators in the U.S. Navy SEALs endure unimaginable pressure, discomfort, and danger for a living. What makes a person capable of that? I think there's a line in the U.S. Navy SEAL ethos that gives us a clue. I'm not going to read you the whole SEAL ethos, mostly because I think the essence of it is visible in these 4 words: I am that man. These guys enter some of the most dangerous situations in the world, where they have to think clearly and adapt quickly and act with precision pretty much without fail. And they succeed because they've trained the skills, and because no matter what happens, when they're on the ground, they see themselves as people who can thrive in extraordinarily difficult situations. Note, this does not say, I will try to be that man, nor I hope to become that man. It just declares, I am that man. The SEAL ethos is a powerful example of something I think of as identity-based performance. I don't know if that's a real term, but it really captures the idea of what I'm talking about. For the SEALs, it's a creed. This is their story. It's a declaration of who they are, not just what they do. Look at some of the language through the rest of the SEAL ethos. Notice these verbs. These aren't goals or vague commitments. They're a declaration of identity, and that matters. Because when everything else is on the line, you don't fall back to your aspirations. You fall back on your identity of who you believe yourself to be. Your actions in the toughest moments of your life are driven first by who you believe yourself to be, and then by what you have thoroughly trained and prepared yourself to do. If it were the other way around, no one would ever choke. If you're a trader who has developed an edge, but you just keep getting in your own way, imagine what would change for you if you genuinely saw yourself as a competent professional trader who consistently executes process every day. And you fully believe that and perceived yourself to be that type of person. This is not just motivational fluff. It's backed by science. Dr. Carol Dweck, she wrote a book called Mindset, and now I think it spawned like most bestsellers into 40 other things. I can't remember the subtitle, but the book is called Mindset, and she covers this research in this field of mindset that echoes this idea of identity. And she groups people broadly into one of 2 categories: those with a fixed mindset, which would be people who kind of have this is who I am, limitations be whatever they are. And there are people with a growth mindset who tend to think of themselves as, this is who I can become. They think they're capable of developing whatever they may not have, but decide that they need. And one of those stories will trap you in your perceived limitations. The other one frees you to grow into somebody else if you find that the person you are is not sufficient for the life you're trying to lead. The SEALs adopt a common ethos, but you could do the same thing for yourself in a personal credo. It's just a story that you write for yourself intentionally to shape your identity and drive elite performance. Dr. Jim Loehr is a performance psychologist who's worked with Olympic athletes and CEOs and elite military units. He says this: the story that you tell yourself is the single most important factor in your performance. In a book called The Power of Story, he makes several key points about this. We live our stories. We live in our stories. Every person has an internal story that defines how they interpret things and how they make decisions and the actions that they take as a result. And these stories are often based on unconscious, outdated, self-limiting narratives. And people have self-talk like, oh, I'm not consistent, or I'm too emotional, or I don't handle pressure well. And those things kind of make certain decisions for us when we are unconsciously acting out of a narrative that has limited us like that. The second thing is our stories drive our behavior. It's not circumstances that shape our lives. It's the meaning that we assign to them. If your story justifies poor choices and reinforces whatever limiting beliefs you have about yourself, your outcomes will reflect that. And the truth is, if your story is broken, your performance as a trader will be too. But the last part of this is what I think is most useful, is we can rewrite our stories. You can choose to have a new, more empowering story, and this involves aligning yourself with a new story that's aligned with your deepest values, and then through some focused repetition of that and ongoing reflection, you gradually adapt your thoughts and actions until they align with your story of an empowered identity. So how do you build this? And I should mention, the first time I came across this info, I thought, really? But I've been working on this for about a year on myself. And I have to tell you, maybe I'm overstating it to say I'm stunned, but it has made a difference. So, taking action. You can incorporate Lair's advice to build a personal credo and use it to change your identity. You do it by beginning with some kind of identified personal purpose for you that preferably looks beyond your individual success and focuses on something significant in life, something that you look at and think, this matters. And this purpose provides the foundation for a powerful new narrative for you. And then you craft a story from that purpose that aligns with it, aligns with your core values, and expresses your ideal self. And that keeps you connected to some deep sense of meaning, no matter what happens. And it fuels resilience and focus and commitment that you will have difficulty mustering at these levels without it. So you need to identify your purpose. There's a thing that Lair uses called the tombstone exercise. And I'll put a link in the description to what that is. And also, I'm going to link to a podcast where he kind of goes over some of this. I forget the title right now, but it's a podcast about being your best self-coach or something like that. And he goes over that exercise in that podcast as well. So I'm going to let you research that on your own, but that is one way that you can go about identifying a purpose for yourself. And this may shift as you grow, so don't get stuck on, I have to figure out my perfect expression of my purpose in life or else I can't make headway. That's not the case. It's more important that you get something and you start moving towards it, and it's okay if you adapt that sense of purpose as you learn more about yourself and you come to understand better what matters to you. And once you have that purpose identified, you write out your old story. And this is really just about getting really honest with yourself. What isn't working? Think about your trading. What are the habits and beliefs and patterns that are holding you back? So what are the things you're doing that maybe at some point you thought would help you, but they're not? And beyond that, what are the things you're doing that are actively working against your success? And you write that out in some kind of brief, concise narrative form. That spells out who you are, and it gives you something to honestly anchor to. It has to be true. You can't gloss over the worst things about yourself, but you also can't only write that necessarily either. After you've written your old story, you focus on writing the new one. And this is really about, I guess if the last bullet point is about what is true, this is about what do I want to be true about me? And you figure that out by thinking about what are the key traits that I need as a trader to be successful? And what are the actions and habits that are going to unleash my performance and best practices that are really going to drive me into a successful career as a professional trader? Those things would be the definition of a story of a new identity that you can build. And I'll go over an example of what this might look like in a minute. And you want to write these things with identity-driven language. I am statements. I act or I do statements, or I choose statements. Make it present tense, make it clear, make it based on your values. Here is a look at what I did. I didn't do it in this order because I didn't think of this sequence of things until I was putting this video together. But over a period of time, I assembled my life purpose. I had already done some work on that in the past, so this part was a little bit easier. And then I wrote my old story and my new story. So just to give you something to work off of, here's an example of what I did. My life purpose consists of 3 key things. This didn't come from me doing the tombstone exercise, but it pretty much aligns with that kind of work. I want my life to be defined by these 3 things. And I know what I mean when I say those things. When I say wisdom, I know that what I mean by that is that I'm a person who seeks to understand the deeper truth of things. And I want to be a person who exercises consistently sound judgment in my life. I don't want to just know and understand stuff. I want to live in a practical way that exhibits wisdom. I want to be a person of integrity who's principled, ethical, trustworthy, and reliable, and that I do the right thing even when the right thing is tough or when I'm the only person who's going to know that I did it ever because nobody's looking. I want to be a person of generosity, not just financially, but I want to enrich the lives of other people through giving them respect, honoring their dignity as a human being, supporting them. Maybe that's financial. Maybe it's through helping in some way that isn't financial. It might be mentoring or coaching or just being around to listen to them. And empowerment. What can I do that takes and contributes value to somebody else's life, that helps them be more than they are right now? That's the kind of person I want to be. So I want to steer my life towards things that allow me to express this, that help me to better embody this as a person. And it's one of those things that there's no done with this. I can pursue this for the rest of my life and continue getting closer and closer to these ideals, but I'll never ever get there. That's my life purpose. And here's my old story that I drafted along with my new one. On the left side, I just sat down and I looked at like what I just described to you, kind of what were all the things that were holding me back. I'm not going to read this aloud to you. You can pause it and read it for yourself. And then I wrote my new story. Notice the first line. I should tell you, I was not an elite professional trader. I wouldn't even consider myself that at this point. I don't know when that will actually be true of me. But that's what I think of as myself and the identity that I am moving towards. And everything that follows on from that is basically fleshing out what is an elite professional trader's identity. And this is what I'm, been moving my life towards being an expression of over time. So you can use that as an example. That's my old story. That's my new story. You take something like this when you're done and you memorize it. The new one, not the old one. The old one is just there as a reference point for you. And notice I wrote this little pivot at the bottom of my old story. That is who I was. It is not who I am. Because I want to be focused on the new story. The new story is what you turn into a credo. And you memorize that. And you use it in the course of your trading work throughout the day as a touch point. Not the whole thing, but once you've memorized this, you will find that different sentences from your credo will come up in your work. And they can be references for you. They can be an affirmation for you. And these are much more powerful affirmations than I'm going to honor my stops or things like that, because they're about who you are. And when you stop in the middle of a difficult moment of your trading and you remind yourself who you are more likely to actually take action on that than you are on just some random thing that you're trying to convince yourself you need to do. Well, I need to hold my trades. Good luck. And I'm not saying that sarcastically. I'm just saying that's a lot harder than seeing yourself based on who you believe yourself to be and being reminded of that through your day. So that's the value in memorizing this new story and using it as a credo. I noted already. I just wrote here for a second time. This really sounds ridiculous. I thought so too, but I really have found that it helps and that it works and makes a real difference. If you are truly intentional about how you approach this, it's not magic words. It's not immediate change. And it's not something that just works because you memorized it and you say it. You need to incorporate this into a few key daily habits. And that is where I think you will find surprising results. Here are the habits. Number 1, focus on your identity. Do some kind of identity focus as part of your AM routines every day. And that should involve writing this credo out by hand. If you want to find out why I might be telling you that, just look up some things about the value of writing things by hand as opposed to typing. It does different things to your brain and makes better and more solid associations. It helps to slow you down so that you're doing a better job actually thinking at some level about what you're writing. Whereas in typing, you can just go into autopilot and crack it out. And that's not what you want to do with something like this, because the purpose is not to write it. The purpose is to think it, and writing helps you do a good job of that. So write your credo by hand. And the next two habits beyond writing this by hand, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. The next thing you want to do is kind of contemplate how you're going to embody some aspect of this in particular during the course of the day. And ideally, this would be whatever part of your credo is most relevant to your current process goal. You want to keep, wherever you can, linking your identity that you're trying to grow into to the real actual actions and goals that you currently have in front of you. And as you see those connections more and more, you find deeper motivation to keep pursuing them and come at them again and again and again, no matter how hard they may be to overcome. So that's the kind of chunk of identity focus. And then once the identity focus work is done, you can use these two next habits to build into some larger framework for managing your performance. So these are not just about this credo, but they're habits that I think you want to use the credo in. So this is a good place to start them, but it's certainly not the only application for them. Daily habit number 2, which is this larger framework that think you can use for other things, is something I call AM commitments. This is a part of my routine every morning where you basically just list your non-negotiable work for the day. These are the things I have to do. That begins with your process goal, whatever that may be. And you're basically taking the time. Again, this is something I write out by hand. You could probably make the argument that you don't have to write this out by hand, but I do. Write out your process goal. Think about the fact that you're making a commitment right now at whatever time in the morning it is. I'm going to execute this today. Then write down the rest of your professional kind of must-do tasks. Whatever you know, I have to accomplish these things today. You should be a productive person even outside of your trading work as a trader. What do I mean by that? What are you working on for research and development? What are you trying to learn right now? What project do you have that's in the middle of being worked on that you need to move the needle forward on? I encourage you to not make too many things on this list of must-dos. Often my list has 1 or 2 things on it. That doesn't mean I'm only doing 1 or 2 other things, but I don't want to commit myself to having to do so many things that I end up overwhelmed. You want to be realistic because you want to be able to nail these. And sometimes there are have-tos on here that you literally, today's the day you have to do it. And then include your personal must-dos. Something I have definitely come to understand deeply working for myself is when you're at home as an independent worker, there's very little realistic separation between your personal and professional life when it comes to how you have to manage your productivity. And so don't just silo that stuff off. Put it here. What are the things you have to do today? We had someone coming to my house over the weekend, and so my Friday included some have-tos about doing various cleaning chores. But that goes into my AM commitments because I want to hold myself accountable at the end of the day for whether I met all those. And the goal with your AM commitments is that the stuff that goes in here is almost sacrosanct. It's going to happen, and you treat it like that. You're going to execute your process goal. You're going to complete your must-do tasks for the day for yourself as a pro and in your personal life. And then the third thing is at the end of your day, institute some kind of habit of evening reflections. For me, this is usually shortly before my bedtime. But as it relates to your credo, what you want to do here is recite your credo to yourself. And I suggest you verbally do it. Don't just think it in your head. You might say it under your breath if there's other people around, or just quietly to yourself, or make a recording of it and listen to yourself saying it back to you. You want to have that in your mind again at the end of your day. And then you want to reflect on how well did I live that out? Obviously, it would take a long time to reflect about every single aspect of your credo every day. But what was that one thing you picked out in the morning that you wanted to try to especially embody today from your credo? How did you do? And then look at the other commitments you made in your personal and professional life, in your AM commitments. How well did you fulfill those? And then how can you make progress tomorrow towards living your identity out a little bit better? And you're just thinking in one-step increments, not huge stuff. You're not going to become a different person in a day. I don't even buy the 1% better language. Do the math. 365 days a year, compounding 1% per day, it's a ridiculous amount. That's not realistic. I'm not even going to assign a number to it. I'm just going to say, don't worry about percents. Just think about, how can I move the needle forward on being more of the person tomorrow that I want to be than I was today? And if you keep these habits up, your identity will get stronger as you begin to take actions that align with the new story that you're telling yourself. And then every time you take an action, that reinforces this new identity. And I should note, this is not like a permanent tattoo. Just as your purpose can be, this is something that evolves over time. I worked on my credo for months. I had an initial draft in a day, but I kept changing the language on it for weeks and weeks and weeks to get to where I finally had it. And that's okay. You want to just gradually iterate until you get this dialed into something that, yeah, that's solid. That's who I want to be. If writing is a barrier for you, feel free to start with mine and then adapt your own as you get more comfortable with how this works. And here is mine for reference if you want to use it. I said this at the beginning. You don't rise to the level of your aspirations. You will fall to the quality of your training and your preparation. And having a strong inner narrative about your identity is part of being prepared to excel as a professional trader. So my question to you is, what story are you living right now? Is it one worth falling back on when everything else is against you in your work or in your life? If you're like most traders I've met, that's probably not the case. And I'm not saying that in a judgmental way. I'm just acknowledging that's the tough reality for most people. And I invite you to pick up your pen and write yourself a new story that you can live up to. Not one that makes things easy, because that's not going to get where you need to be, but one that does make you strong. One that reminds you of who you are and why you're here, even when the pressure is really on. Because when you own your story, when you engage with it intentionally, when you begin to back it up with your actions, you do not just change a mindset, you change the path that you're on. And that changes your performance, and ultimately, that will change your life. See you soon.